I discovered my brother was sleeping with my wife for years while I financially supported his family. Now he's begging for help after I got him fired from his high-paying job and his wife left him. I never thought I'd end up in a situation where my own brother would betray me in the worst possible way. Honestly, I'm still processing everything that's happened over the past few months. It's like my entire life has been torn apart and rearranged into something I barely recognize. My brother, Jack, and I used to be close growing up. There was a 4-year age gap between us, with me being the older one. Our parents always taught us that family comes first, and I took that lesson to heart. When I graduated college and landed a good job at a financial consulting firm, I was more than happy to help Jack financially when he needed it. And he needed it often. Jack had always been the charming one, quick with jokes and able to win people over instantly. But he was also impulsive and terrible with money. He married his college sweetheart, Melissa, when they were both 22. They had twins a year later, which complicated their financial situation even further since neither of them had established careers yet. I was 27 at the time, doing well in my career, and had just met Emily. She was smart, ambitious, and worked as a marketing executive. We connected immediately, and after dating for 2 years, we got married. Emily got along great with my family, especially with Jack and Melissa. We would often have dinner together, babysit the twins, and even vacation together when we could all coordinate our schedules. When Jack lost his job 5 years ago, I didn't hesitate to help. I gave him money for his mortgage, car payments, and even private school tuition for the twins. It wasn't a small amount, probably close to $3,000 a month for nearly a year. When he finally found a new job at a prestigious tech company, I was relieved. His salary was even better than before, and I thought my financial support could finally end. But old habits die hard. Jack and Melissa continued living beyond their means. Designer clothes, luxury cars, exotic vacations, all while occasionally still asking me for loans they never repaid. Emily questioned why I kept supporting them when they clearly made poor financial choices, but I always defended Jack. He's my brother, I'd say. Family helps family. What I didn't know was that while I was helping support his family, Jack was systematically destroying mine. The revelation came in the most unexpected way. I was working late one night about 3 months ago, trying to finish a major project before a deadline. I called Emily to let her know I'd be home late, but she didn't answer. This wasn't unusual, she often had evening meetings or worked out after work. I thought nothing of it. When I finally got home around 11 p.m., the house was dark and quiet. Emily's car was in the driveway, so I assumed she was asleep. I quietly made my way to our bedroom, not wanting to wake her. But the bed was empty. Confused, I checked the guest rooms, the office, and even the basement. No Emily. That's when I heard faint sounds coming from our backyard. We had built a small guest house there a few years back, mainly for when my parents or Emily's family visited. The lights were on. Thinking Emily might be preparing it for upcoming guests, I headed there. As I approached, I could hear muffled voices and laughter. When I got closer, I recognized both voices, Emily's and Jack's. I was confused. Why would Jack be at our house so late without Melissa? Why hadn't Emily mentioned he was coming over? I wasn't trying to spy, but something felt off. I quietly walked up to the window and peered in. What I saw shattered my world instantly. Emily and Jack were in bed together, clearly intimate, laughing and talking like this was routine. My wife and my brother. The two people I trusted most in the world. I must have made a noise because they both suddenly looked towards the window. I'll never forget the look on their faces, not shame or remorse, but annoyance at being discovered. I burst through the door, barely able to speak through my shock and anger. "What the hell is this?" I managed to ask, my voice barely above a whisper. Emily quickly pulled the sheets up while Jack jumped out of bed, scrambling for his clothes. "Mike, it's not." "Well, I guess it is what it looks like," Jack said, attempting a nervous laugh. That laugh, so casual, so dismissive of the fact that he was destroying my life, pushed me over the edge. I lunged at him, grabbing him by the throat and slamming him against the wall. Emily was screaming, begging me to stop. I released Jack and turned to her. "How long?" I demanded. She wouldn't meet my eyes. 3 years, she finally admitted. 3 years. 3 fucking years. While I was working overtime to maintain our lifestyle and help support Jack's family, they were carrying on behind my back. Every dinner, every family gathering, every time I picked up one of Jack's bills, they were laughing at me. "Get out," I told them both, my voice deadly calm. "Both of you. Get out of my house." Jack tried to reason with me, saying we should talk about this like adults. The audacity of that statement made me laugh bitterly. Emily was crying now, saying she never meant to hurt me, that it just happened. Classic cheater excuses. You have 5 minutes to get your essential things, Emily, and then I want you gone. You can come back for the rest when I'm not here. Jack, if you're not off my property in 2 minutes, I'm calling the police and telling them I found an intruder in my home. They both left. Emily went to stay with a friend, and Jack presumably went home to his wife and kids, the family I had been helping to support while he betrayed me. I spent that night in a daze, alternating between rage, disbelief, and devastating sadness. By morning, I had formulated a plan. I wasn't going to let this betrayal stand. I wasn't going to be the good brother who forgives and forgets. Not this time. My first call was to Melissa. She deserved to know. When I told her about what I'd discovered, her reaction surprised me. There was a long silence, and then a deep sigh. I suspected something, she admitted quietly. There were signs. Late nights, unexplained absences, being protective of his phone. I didn't want to believe it. I'm sorry, I told her, and I meant it. She was another victim in this mess. What are you going to do? She asked. Whatever it takes to make sure they both feel the consequences of their actions, I replied honestly. My next move was calculated. I worked in financial consulting, and my firm occasionally did business with Jack's company. I had contacts there, including the head of HR who I'd helped when she was going through a difficult divorce. I hadn't planned to use this connection for revenge, but circumstances had changed. I arranged a coffee meeting with her under the pretense of discussing potential collaboration between our companies. Once we were seated, I got straight to the point. I need to talk to you about Jack Thompson, I said. My brother. She looked surprised but nodded for me to continue. Are you aware that he's been using company resources to conduct an affair? Her eyebrows shot up. No, I wasn't aware of that. Can you elaborate? I explained that Jack had been using his company laptop and phone to coordinate meetings with his mistress. I didn't mention it was my wife, sending inappropriate messages during work hours, and even using his company car to drive to these rendezvous. I knew all this because Jack had occasionally left his devices unlocked around me, and I had seen notifications pop up. At the time, I hadn't thought much of it, just that he was being careless with company property. This is concerning, she said. But I'm curious why you're bringing this to my attention now. Because I just found out about the affair, I replied honestly. And it made me realize that this behavior reflects poorly on your company. If he's willing to betray his own family, what might he be willing to do with company secrets or client information? She thanked me for the information and assured me they would investigate. I knew Jack's company had strict policies about the use of company resources and a zero-tolerance policy for certain types of misconduct. Within a week, Jack was fired. The official reason was misuse of company resources and violation of the code of conduct, but he knew the real reason. He called me, furious, accusing me of sabotaging his career out of spite. You've ruined me, he shouted over the phone. Do you have any idea how hard it will be to find another job at this level with a termination like this on my record? About as hard as it is to piece your life back together when you find out your brother and wife have been sleeping together for years, I replied calmly before hanging up. I wasn't done. Next came the divorce proceedings with Emily. I had documented evidence of the affair, thanks to text messages I'd recovered and witness statements, including Melissa's. I also had proof of all the money I'd given to Jack over the years, money that had indirectly funded his lifestyle while he was sleeping with my wife. My lawyer was excellent, and Emily's attempts to claim half of our assets quickly fell apart. The divorce was finalized with me keeping our house, my retirement accounts, and most of our joint savings. Emily was left with her personal belongings, her car, and the harsh reality of her choices. As for Melissa, she decided to divorce Jack as well. Between losing his job and his marriage, Jack's perfect life was crumbling fast. The twins, now teenagers, refused to speak to him once they learned what he'd done. They chose to stay with their mother full-time. About a month after everything went down, I was sitting at home on a Friday night when my doorbell rang. I opened it to find Jack standing there, looking like a shell of his former self. He had lost weight, his usually well-groomed appearance was disheveled, and there were dark circles under his eyes. "Can I come in?" he asked, his voice lacking its usual confidence. Against my better judgment, I stepped aside to let him in. We sat in silence in my living room for a moment before he spoke. "I fucked up, Mike. I fucked up worse than anyone has ever fucked up." I said nothing, just stared at him, waiting. "I lost everything. My job, my wife, my kids won't talk to me, I had to move into a crappy apartment." He ran his hands through his hair. I'm drowning in debt. The mortgage, car payments, the kids' school. I can't afford any of it now. I remained silent. I know I have no right to ask this, he continued, but I need help. Just to get back on my feet. A loan, or maybe you could put in a good word at your company? I've applied to 50 jobs and can't even get an interview. I laughed then, a cold, hollow sound that seemed to startle him. You're actually sitting in my house, asking me for money and favors after what you did? I know it sounds crazy, he admitted. But you've always been the one who helped me. Ever since we were kids. You're my brother. Was your brother, I corrected him. That relationship ended the moment you decided to sleep with my wife. I made a terrible mistake, he pleaded. I got caught up in something I couldn't control. Emily was persuasive. Don't you dare blame her, I snapped. You were both adults making conscious choices for 3 years. 3 years, Jack. This wasn't a drunken mistake or a momentary lapse in judgment. He looked down at his hands. You're right. I'm sorry. I don't know what to do. I'm desperate. Now you know how Melissa felt all those times you chose to lie to her face, I told him. How it feels to have your whole world collapse around you. So you won't help me? Even a small loan to get through the month? Let me make this perfectly clear, I said, standing up to indicate the conversation was over. I will never give you another penny as long as I live. I will never put in a good word for you anywhere. In fact, if anyone asks me about you, I'll tell them exactly what kind of man you really are, the kind who sleeps with his brother's wife while taking his brother's money. Jack's expression hardened. You always did think you were better than me. Perfect Mike, the responsible one, the successful one. Maybe that's why Emily came to me in the first place, because I know how to make a woman feel wanted, not just provided for. That comment should have made me angry, but instead, it just confirmed what I already knew. Jack wasn't sorry for what he'd done, he was sorry he got caught and was facing consequences. Get out of my house, I said calmly. And don't come back. As he was leaving, he turned back one last time. Mom and Dad are disappointed in how you're handling this. They think families should forgive each other. I laughed again. Tell them they're welcome to support you then. I'm sure they'll enjoy having you drain their retirement funds. After Jack left, I poured myself a drink and sat down to process what had just happened. Our parents had indeed called me, urging me to forgive Jack, to help him get back on his feet. They didn't seem to understand the magnitude of his betrayal or were choosing to minimize it in favor of family harmony. He made a mistake, my mother had said tearfully during our last conversation. A terrible one, but he's still your brother. He made a choice, I had corrected her. Thousands of choices, every day, for 3 years. And now he's facing the consequences of those choices. That night, after Jack's visit, I decided to cut ties with my parents as well, at least temporarily. I couldn't handle their pressure to reconcile with Jack while my own wounds were still so fresh. I sent them a message explaining that I needed space and would contact them when I was ready. The next few weeks were surprisingly peaceful. Without the drama of Jack's needs, Emily's betrayal, or my parents' guilt trips, I found myself able to focus on healing. I threw myself into work, reconnected with friends I had neglected during my marriage, and even started seeing a therapist to process the betrayal. Then one evening, I received a text from Melissa asking if we could meet for coffee. I had always liked Melissa, she was kind, thoughtful, and had been a good sister-in-law to me over the years. I agreed to meet her the following day. When we met, she looked better than I expected, calmer, more centered. The initial shock had worn off, and she seemed to be finding her footing in her new reality. I wanted to thank you, she began after we had exchanged greetings, for telling me the truth about Jack and Emily. It was painful, but I needed to know. You deserve to know, I replied. I'm sorry it had to come from me. She nodded. I also wanted to let you know that I've gotten a job. A good one, with benefits. The twins and I are going to be okay financially. That's great news, Melissa. I'm really happy for you. There was a pause, and then she continued, there's something else you should know. Jack moved in with Emily last week. I felt a sharp pang in my chest, but it wasn't as painful as I might have expected. I can't say I'm surprised. They seem well suited for each other. There's more, Melissa said, looking uncomfortable. They're telling everyone that their relationship started after both of your marriages were already falling apart. They're painting themselves as the victims of controlling, unloving spouses who found comfort in each other. I shook my head, disgusted but not shocked. Of course they are. Heaven forbid they take responsibility for their actions. I wanted you to know because they've been contacting mutual friends, family members, even some of your colleagues, spreading this version of events. I've been setting the record straight when I can, but. Thank you, I said, genuinely moved by her loyalty. You don't have to do that. Yes, I do, she insisted. What they did to us was wrong, and I won't let them rewrite history to make themselves feel better. We spent the next hour catching up, sharing our experiences of dealing with the aftermath of the betrayal, and even laughing a little at the absurdity of it all. It felt good to talk to someone who truly understood what I was going through. Before we parted ways, Melissa hesitated, then said, I know this might be crossing a line, but would you want to have dinner sometime? Not as brother and sister-in-law, but just as two people who might enjoy each other's company? I was surprised by the invitation but found myself nodding. I'd like that. Our first dinner was slightly awkward, we were both very aware of our complicated connection. But by the second and third dinners, we found ourselves genuinely enjoying each other's company. Melissa was smart, funny, and shared many of my values about family, work, and life. We agreed to take things extremely slowly, aware of the potential complications. 6 weeks after our first dinner, Jack showed up at my office. I was in a meeting when my assistant interrupted to say my brother was insisting on seeing me. I finished my meeting before having her send him in, refusing to let him disrupt my professional life. When he entered my office, he looked worse than before, unshaven, wearing wrinkled clothes, with a desperate look in his eyes. I need to talk to you, he said without preamble. I'm listening, I replied, keeping my tone neutral. Emily left me, he blurted out. She said it wasn't working. I think she's seeing someone else, her boss, maybe. I couldn't help but laugh. And you're surprised? She cheated with you, now she's cheating on you. That's usually how it goes. He ignored my comment. I need a job, Mike. Any job. I'm about to be evicted from my apartment. I've got nothing left. That sounds like a personal problem, I said coldly. Damn it, Mike. I'm your brother. How long are you going to punish me? I've lost everything already. You lost everything by your own choices, I reminded him. And I'm not punishing you, I'm simply refusing to rescue you from the consequences of those choices. Fine, he spat. I heard you've been seeing Melissa. Is that your way of getting back at me? Dating my ex-wife? I stood up, my patience gone. What Melissa and I do is none of your business. Now get out of my office before I call security. You always were a sanctimonious prick, he snarled. You think you're so much better than everyone else. Well, guess what? Melissa's probably just using you for your money, just like she used me. Goodbye, Jack, I said, pressing the intercom button on my desk. Janet, please escort my brother out of the building. After he left, I sat back down, my hands shaking slightly. Despite everything, it was still painful to see him like this, desperate, angry, lashing out. But I reminded myself that he had made his choices, and now he had to live with them. That evening, I called Melissa and told her about Jack's visit. She listened quietly, then sighed. He came to see me yesterday too, she admitted. He wanted me to let him see the twins. I told him that's up to them, not me. They're old enough to decide if they want a relationship with him. How are they doing with all of this? I asked. Better than I expected. They're angry and hurt, but they're also resilient. They have each other, which helps. We talked for a while longer, and I found myself feeling grateful for her presence in my life. Whatever was developing between us, it was built on mutual respect, honesty, and a shared understanding of the pain we'd both endured. 3 days later, I received a call from my mother. Jack had been arrested for drunk driving and needed bail money. She and my father had already spent most of their savings helping him over the past few months and couldn't afford the bail. Please, Michael, she begged. I know you're still angry, but he's hitting rock bottom. He needs help, not more punishment. Mom, I said gently, Jack is 36 years old. He made choices that destroyed 2 families. I'm not responsible for bailing him out, literally or figuratively. So you'll just let him rot in jail because you're still holding a grudge? She asked, her voice hard. It's not a grudge, Mom. It's a boundary. Jack betrayed me in the worst possible way, took advantage of my generosity for years, and has shown zero genuine remorse. I'm not obligated to help him. She was quiet for a moment, then said, I never thought you could be so cold. And I never thought you would expect me to keep helping someone who deliberately hurt me so deeply, I replied. I guess we're both disappointed. After I hung up, I sat with my thoughts for a while. Was I being too harsh? Should I help Jack one last time? But then I remembered his face when I caught him with Emily, annoyed at being discovered, not remorseful for the betrayal. I remembered how he had blamed Emily when trying to apologize to me, unwilling to take full responsibility. I remembered how he had spread lies about our marriages to make himself look better. No, I decided. I was not going to enable Jack anymore. Sometimes the kindest thing you can do for someone is to let them face the full consequences of their actions. Maybe hitting rock bottom was exactly what Jack needed to finally grow up and take responsibility for his life. 2 months passed. I heard through family that Jack had spent 3 days in jail before our parents managed to scrape together enough money for his bail. He was now staying with them, supposedly looking for work and attending AA meetings, though I had my doubts about his commitment to either. Melissa and I continued seeing each other, careful to keep our relationship private from the twins until we were sure it was serious. We enjoyed a comfortable rhythm of dinners, movies, and quiet evenings talking about everything and nothing. There was no rush, no pressure, just two people enjoying each other's company and healing together. One Saturday afternoon, I was helping Melissa with some yard work at her house when a car pulled up in the driveway. Jack stepped out, looking better than he had in months, clean-shaven, clear-eyed, wearing pressed clothes. "What are you doing here?" Melissa asked, stepping in front of me as if to protect me from him. The gesture wasn't lost on me. "I came to apologize," Jack said, his voice steady. "To both of you." Melissa and I exchanged glances, both skeptical. "I've been sober for 52 days, he continued. "I'm working the steps in AA, and part of that is making amends to the people I've hurt. I know words aren't enough, and I don't expect forgiveness. I just need to say that I'm truly sorry for the pain I caused both of you." His apology sounded rehearsed but sincere. Still, after everything, it was hard to take him at his word. "Thank you for the apology," Melissa said formally. "The twins are inside if you want to see them. They might not want to see you, though." Jack nodded. "I understand. I'd like to try, if that's okay." As Melissa led Jack into the house to speak with the twins, I stayed outside, processing my feelings. Part of me wanted to believe Jack was genuinely changing, that he had finally hit bottom and was climbing back up. Another part reminded me that I'd seen this pattern before. Jack messes up, appears contrite, gets help, then eventually falls back into old habits. When they came back outside about 20 minutes later, Jack looked emotional but composed. "They agreed to have lunch with me next weekend," he said, a mix of relief and nervousness in his voice. "It's a start." He turned to me then. "Mike, I know you probably don't want to hear this from me, but you two are good together. Better than Melissa and I ever were. Better than Emily and I were." I didn't know how to respond to that, so I just nodded. "I'm staying with Mom and Dad for now," he continued. "Working at Dad's friend's hardware store. It's not much, but it's honest work. I'm saving up for my own place." "Good for you," I said, meaning it. Whatever my feelings about Jack, I didn't want him to suffer forever. I just wanted him to learn from his mistakes and become a better person. "Well, I should go," he said awkwardly. "Thank you for listening. Both of you." After he left, Melissa came to stand beside me, taking my hand. "What do you think?" she asked. "I think he's trying," I replied honestly. "Whether it lasts or not, I guess time will tell." "Do you think you'll ever forgive him?" she asked quietly. I considered the question carefully. "Forgiveness isn't the same as reconciliation," I finally said. "I might eventually forgive him for my own peace of mind, but I don't think we'll ever have the same relationship again. Too much has been broken." She nodded, understanding. "That's how I feel too. I want him to get better for the twins' sake, but I'll never trust him again." We went back to our yard work, the conversation shifting to lighter topics. Later that evening, as we sat on her porch watching the sunset, Melissa leaned her head on my shoulder. "Sometimes terrible things lead to unexpected blessings," she said softly. "I would never have chosen this path, but I'm grateful that it led me to you." I put my arm around her, pulling her closer. "Me too." In the months that followed, Jack continued his sobriety and slowly rebuilt relationships with his children. My parents finally stopped pressuring me to fully reconcile with him, accepting that while I could be civil, the close brotherhood we once had was gone forever. Emily reached out once or twice, but I had nothing to say to her. Last I heard, she had moved to another state for a fresh start after things with Jack didn't work out. As for Melissa and me, we continued taking things slowly, healing together, and building something new, something based on honesty, respect, and genuine care for each other. Neither of us knew what the future held, but for the first time in a long time, I was looking forward to finding out. I never imagined that my brother's betrayal would ultimately lead me to a deeper understanding of myself and what I truly wanted in life. It taught me painful but necessary lessons about setting boundaries, recognizing manipulation, and valuing myself enough to walk away from toxic relationships, even when they're with family. Most importantly, it taught me that sometimes the biggest acts of betrayal can lead to unexpected second chances. Not with the people who hurt you, but with yourself, and sometimes, with someone who has been hurt in the same way and understands exactly what it takes to rebuild trust in a world that suddenly feels unsafe. Update: it's been over a year since everything happened. Jack has maintained his sobriety and is slowly rebuilding his life. He has a small apartment now and regular visitation with the twins. We're civil when we need to be in the same space, but we'll never be close again, and I'm at peace with that. Melissa and I recently bought a house together. The twins seem happy about our relationship, though we're careful not to put them in any uncomfortable positions regarding their father. My parents have finally stopped trying to force a full reconciliation between Jack and me, accepting that some betrayals change relationships forever. I still occasionally think about what might have happened if I hadn't discovered the affair that night. How long would it have continued? Would I still be financially supporting Jack while he and my wife laughed behind my back? The thought makes me angry, but I'm working on letting go of that anger for my own sake. In a strange way, I'm almost grateful for what happened. It forced me to set boundaries I should have set years ago. It showed me who was truly loyal and who wasn't. And it led me to a relationship based on mutual respect and understanding rather than betrayal and lies. Sometimes the worst betrayals lead to the best redirections. I never would have chosen this path, but I'm at peace with where it has led me.